Last week, I ranked the 15 best point guards in the NBA. This week, my task got a little easier with the shooting guards. However, it was still extremely difficult and may lead to some controversy. Rookie sensation Brandon Miller finds himself at 15 on my list. Despite many people, including myself, heavily critiquing Miller, he proved to be the second best player in the loaded 2023 draft class. Putting up the numbers he did on a team that may be below subpar as a rookie whose biggest questions revolved around his self-creation makes me confident that putting him at 15 is a good place for him. As someone who values defense and effectiveness off the ball in the NBA, Herb Jones is one of the players I believe to be extremely underrated. The defensive capability of Herb is no joke as he continues to find himself on all defensive teams. The thing that elevates Herb now is nothing other than the turnaround on offense he has had. He went from an offensive liability to a player that shot 42% from 3 this season. People don't know that Herb was nearly a 50-40-90 player while being all defensive first team this year. So as of now, he is 14, but if the efficiency is sustained, he can move up. Everything I just said about Herb Jones holds true to Alex Caruso, except Caruso has been the more consistent offensive player in his career, giving him the slight edge over Herb, even though I would say Herb will be better after next season. It will be interesting to see what offensive numbers Caruso puts up on the OKC Thunder team, which is a better system for a player that plays in the way he does. Jalen Green becoming a father allowed us to finally see the true offensive potential we have been awaiting. My only problem is the small sample size, which means he can revert to his old ways. These old ways are the reason he is not getting a max contract this offseason, but if we see the improvements we saw in efficiency and offensive production throughout a whole season, we could be looking at a top 10 shooting guard this time next year. My biggest concern with him, though, no matter what happens offensively, is defense, as he is just atrocious on that end of the floor. And given the fact that most shooting guards can play both sides, it will limit his peak within the 2-guard rankings. At 11, I have my 6th man of the year, Malik Monk. The reason I have him over a player like Jalen Green, though, despite stats leaning towards Green, is when you look at the Kings, Malik Monk has been the most reliable help for De'Aaron Fox the past 2 seasons in terms of perimeter scoring and playmaking. When Monk has an off night or is out of the lineup, the Kings look lost, and that goes to show how much Monk affects winning in a positive way, even if he does come off the bench. Dante DiVincenzo went from a low-minute bench player in Golden State to a top 10 shooting guard in the NBA. Although his role will look different next season with the off-season additions, DiVincenzo is still going to play a huge role on this team. His defensive ability combined with his shooting and off-ball movement makes him a prominent 2-guard that has a huge impact on winning as a role player, which is why he finds himself at 10 on my list. I love Derek White's game just as much as Dante's, but unfortunately I do have to say White has been misevaluated all season. If you only listen to the media, Derek White would be a top 5 shooting guard, which is just not true at all. I do not want us to mix words. Derek White is the Michael Jordan of role-playing guards, but he is not better than players that have bigger roles like he is made out to be. I feel as an NBA community we need to cool down on his hype and start becoming more aware of players, bringing more production in infinitely more difficult situations. One player I was trying to advocate for while discussing Derek White is Colin Sexton. Ever since he went to Utah, the media has forgotten all about him. One of the more versatile players in the league as he can score and play make both on and off the ball while bringing elite on and off ball defense. This season, he averaged 19 points and 5 assists on 49, 39, and 86 shooting splits. The craziest part about those numbers aren't even how good and efficient they were, but rather he put those numbers up in 26.6 minutes a game. He is the most interesting player on the potential trade market, in my opinion, because any contender that needs a guard can use him. He's one of the most underrated players in the league, and he's the 8th best 2-guard in the league. I have been hypercritical of Bradley Beal all season long as I am a Suns fan, but as much negative critique I have for him, he has become extremely underrated. This season was by no means good for Beal as his numbers took a massive dip and the health stayed as bad as it has always been, as we know him as an unreliable player in that aspect of basketball. However, in the NBA, we have seen players change scenery and take on new roles and struggle with the adjustment. People forget that Beal was hurt for most of the first half of the season, so he never had the adjustment time on the court, nor was able to establish a rhythm, which is key for a player like him. Having a full year under his belt, I expect Beal to get his averages back up to a true third options nature, as well as maintaining his efficiency from this year. Anthony Simons averaged 23, 4, and 6 on 43, 39, and 92 shooting splits. with absolutely zero media recognition this year. Anthony's game is pure on the perimeter as he shows us his all-star capabilities night in and night out, despite playing on a team that is terrible. If the Blazers are smart, they hold on to him, but if he is traded to a team like the Magic, we are looking at a future co-star at Apollo that would be feared for years to come. I'm hoping for a trade so that we can have a consensus agreement of putting him within the top 6 like I did, and potentially as a borderline top 5 shooting guard. To start our top 5, we have Tyler Hero. If we looked at the first month of the season and only that, Hero was playing at a top 3 2-guard level. Unfortunately, he would end up getting hurt and his play declined in his return. I believe that if he didn't get hurt, being in the top 5 would be a no-brainer, but I did have my hesitation about it while constructing my list. The thing that ultimately made my decision easier was how impressive his playmaking was this season. Watching the beginning of the year and the playoffs, Tyler Hero's ability to create shots for his teammates as well as for himself drastically improved. Seeing that jump this year and knowing he can continue to grow that side of his game makes me actually impressed about Tyler Hero for the first time in a while. At 4, we have a player that will be on the point guards list next season as he was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans after a rough 2 years in Atlanta. If you haven't guessed the player at 4, it is DeJounte Murray. Anyone saying DeJounte doesn't still have the ability to be an all-star does not understand how much of a disservice playing shooting guard the past 2 seasons has been. Watching the games when Trae Young was playing compared to without just shows us how bad of a parent it was for DeJounte and that he is still elite. When playing the point, DeJounte proved he is still an elite shot maker and creator, both for self and others. His defense may have slipped, but playing in a situation where he will be happier and more competitive makes players suddenly figure out that end of the floor, so I'm not worried about that. Watching him play without Trae and knowing he will be back to playing his natural position next season, I feel 4 is a perfect spot for him on this list. The funniest part about DeJounte being 4 is that he is nowhere close to the third player on my list, Kyrie Irving. You either love Kyrie Irving or you are a Nets, Cavs, or Celtics fan, and your reasoning for it has everything to do with something other than basketball. Nearly a 50-40-90 guy on the Western Conference Champions team, Kyrie embraced the co-star role this season, and it paid dividends. If you were to base everything on stats, Kyrie Irving is actually the best shooting guard in the NBA. But if you factor in that he is a second option, no matter how much you love him, you cannot put him over the top 2 guys. Kyrie Irving's stock is back up though, and he is undoubtedly the 3rd best shooting guard in the NBA after the 2024 season. With identical averages but much worse shooting splits than Kyrie, Anthony Edwards finds himself over Kai because of what we see when we watch games opposed to stats. The word aura has been popular and turned into a joke, but Anthony Edwards has so much aura as he carries himself in a way that makes nearly everyone a fan of him. Swagger combined with ability is not something you find every day, but to add the mentality and intensity he plays with on both ends of the floor, you get a superstar you want to watch play. But if that doesn't separate Ant from most of the pack, you should factor in his reliability, as he never sits throughout a season unless he has a significant injury. Playing in 79 games this season with a lingering ankle injury among others seems to be overshadowed. If he hadn't already earned the 2nd spot on this list from what he did on the court alone this season, the other factors that I just mentioned would have propelled him up there regardless. And with no surprise, Donovan Mitchell is the best shooting guard in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell has found himself number 2 for the past few seasons, but this year he finally found his way atop the list. Unfortunately, Mitchell falls into the same common critique for players in this position, as his inability to stay healthy makes him an unreliable player. Despite playing like an all-NBA team player this year, he was unable to be recognized for it as he only played 55 games in the regular season, and in the postseason, he got hurt in the 2nd round, ultimately hindering the Cavs from even having a chance to compete with Boston. No matter the struggles we saw in Cleveland through his first 2 seasons, one thing remains the same. Mitchell is one of the best offensive players in the league and is one of the best guards in the NBA. If you were expecting Devin Booker to be here, I based everything off starting lineups and listed positions, and Book is a point guard now. So if you want to see where he ranks on that list, that video is on the screen. If you want to see where Jaylen Brown, Paul George, LeBron, and many more elite players find themselves next week in the small forwards video, come back next week. And the best way to ensure that you see that video is by subscribing and turning on post notifications so you don't miss it when it comes out. Y'all stay safe. Have a good one. Bye.